North Dakota legislature has now passed a fetal personhood bill, declaring that fetuses have human rights beginning at conception, and the governor has not said whether or not he's going to sign it. He has given no indication yet. He's a Republican, but we'll see what happens coming up this week if he signs it.
Well, I know that the governor is worried about signing it because of the fact that, he's going to have to spend a tremendous amount of resources fighting this if it gets to the Supreme Court.
Sure.
So who knows? There is a possibility that he won't sign it, but if he doesn't sign it, the legislature, all they need to do is basically override his veto by a simple majority. So who knows what's going to happen? I have a feeling that at some point something like this is going to get to the Supreme Court, and it makes me happy that we did, re-elect Obama for that specific purpose, because imagine if Romney won, and imagine if two of our Supreme Court judges, either retired or,
need to be replaced.
Be replaced. Okay, that's a very, good way of putting it. Yeah, diplomatic way of putting it. I mean, if we had someone like Romney, there's a huge possibility that he would nominate very, very conservative judges.
Oh, absolutely. And, not just at the Supreme Court level, but at the state level as well, because it matters for the appeals court level as well, and the circuit courts. So, I think that you're right, that's what's basically going on in all of these Republican-dominated legislatures around the country, that they are putting forth these bills that they know are not going to withstand constitutional scrutiny, but they want to get them in front of the Supreme Court in order to push through the idea that, to finally get a challenge to Roe v. Wade, which I think a lot of young women aren't really aware of, the idea that their reproductive rights are under attack. I don't think they realize that this could actually extend to forms of birth control. Like there are some complaints that the pill, for example, would fall under this and would be banned under a specifically restrictive
What about
fetal
like miscarriage or something like that? Do they have any consideration?
See,
I assume they do.
It would be unworkable in enforcement, I would think, but that's not the point. The point is to get it to the Supreme Court.
I think they're not going far enough. I think that we should prosecute women that have miscarriages, because obviously they probably did something wrong. No, I'm kidding. But in all seriousness, there are cases of women who give birth to stillborns, and they get prosecuted in conservative states like Mississippi, because what will happen is the prosecutors will look into the past of this woman to see whether or not there was ever a history of drug abuse, and if there was, she would have to stand trial for murder. Rennie Gibbs from Mississippi is a perfect example of that. You guys should definitely look her up. I mean, when that story broke, I was amazed that it didn't get any coverage at all. We're prosecuting women who are giving birth to stillborn babies.
Yeah.
That's insane. What are we doing in this country?
Yeah, I mean, it's disgusting that we have to still continue having these fights, that, we fought for, women fought for their reproductive rights, and yet we are still having to fight for this. That the right to use contraception only was established by Supreme Court ruling in the 60s. We've only had the right to use contraception if you're married since the 1960s. And luckily, of course, that's changed over time. But, I think people forget that you must always be constantly vigilant, apparently, in your individual rights and in fighting for them and in watching out for them, because there is a concerted effort to take them away from you.
Yeah. So we're still talking about abortion. Like, it doesn't matter that it happened back in the 60s and then the 70s for Roe v. Wade. We're still debating it. And the thing that really scares me is not specific to this issue. We're trying to work to have gay marriage be legalized around the country, and we're working for marijuana to be legalized. Those are two of the big issues that are being debated. Are we going to be debating those until 2090 or something like that? Like, if they do actually pass, is that going to be the next generation of conservative activists?
I think that these right-wing extremists are slowly but surely dying off, okay? And I mean dying off in the sense that they're losing support. And I think that there are numerous studies that indicate that. Recently we talked about a study indicating that 1 in 5 people in the United States do not have a specific religious affiliation. Religion is really a big problem, because right now we have the extreme fundamentalists in the country dictating what our legislation should be based on their morality and based on their religion. If we could just convince people to not be fundamentalists, and I feel like we're kind of headed in that direction, maybe at some point we'll stop having these ridiculous discussions about how a zygote should have the same constitutional rights as a living, breathing human being.